How an African immigrant networked his way to the top of the rap game. The story of French Montana is one of the most interesting stories in hip-hop music. How is it that an immigrant who couldn't speak English when he migrated to the Bronx as a young teenager was able to make it to the top of the rap game and make millions? Well, the answer is simple: networking. He is often critiqued for having to collaborate with other artists in order to make his songs, but it is a recipe that has definitely worked for him, and if it ain't broke, why fix it? If you aren't familiar with French's background, you might think he's an industry plant, but he is far from that. He truly started from the bottom and worked his way up, from his humble beginnings in the Bronx street corners to being snuggled up with the Kardashians on television, and also partying with Diddy. His persistent grind and good business acumen is something to behold, but his networking skills is what got him to the top. There are tons of reasons why people never make it, and it is most likely that the most talented rapper probably never ever recorded a song or even showed off his talent to his closest friend. The truth is, if you're not willing to put yourself out there, put the work in, and shake the right hands and rub the right shoulders, you will never make it as a rapper. French knew this from an early age. French started his rap career by being a local street battle rapper in the Bronx around the year 2002. Most hip-hop fans couldn't fathom French being a battle rapper, as he is now known for his very basic lyrics and rhyme schemes, but he was actually a pretty decent battle rapper. He might not have been the best or had the skills to compete with the battle rappers we see on Smack today, but he was good enough to win plenty of battles that usually involved hundreds of dollars. They were usually done between different neighborhoods and the winner would take all. But he knew the few hundreds he would make battle rapping wouldn't lead to getting his family out of poverty. He was unable to find a real buzz with a battle rap career. That is when he developed what might be the most genius original marketing scheme we have seen in rap history. French Montana decided to start his own DVD series that featured big hip-hop artists and well-known drug dealers. His plan was to interview or vlog rappers and drug dealers. He also would shoot music videos for these rappers and release them on his DVD. This was around the time of 2005, where YouTube still wasn't a no thing for music artists. The only way to really be seen was to have a big label that would get you TV time. With this DVD idea, rappers would now have a platform to be seen without the mainstream audience, sort of how YouTube is now. But the only problem is, he was an unknown rapper with no type of buzz. His solution was to film other rappers like 50 Cent, Uncle Murda, or any other rapper who he could get on, big or small. He also would have drug dealers like Big Meech and the BMF gang. French was known as the camera guy or DVD guy at the time. The DVD was a success, but this is where the genius part comes in effect. In the middle of the DVD, French would sprinkle his own music in music videos, vlogs, and interviews of himself as an artist, with the majority of the audience having no idea that this rapper was actually the man behind the camera of these DVDs. It seemed like he was a respected up-and-coming rapper. With the success of the DVD series, he was able to give himself a platform for a big enough audience to consume his music. At the beginning, no one who was buying these DVDs were aware of French Montana, but by then they did. He was able to capitalize off the big names he was doing business with and give some validity to his rap career. Enough validity to get the attention of hip-hop artist Akon, who was looking to sign French, but nothing ever came from that. One of the rappers French Montana was able to cross paths with early on was with legendary Harlem rapper maxb. This was a pivotal moment in French Montana's career. This is where his career would take a massive boost. maxb was the hottest up-and-coming rapper in New York at the time and had a big cult following for his unique soulful style that was coined as being wavy, but his career seemed to have a glass ceiling due to the weird situation he was in. You can check out more on this topic in my previous video that I will have linked below. maxb was engulfed in a serious rap beef with his boss and label owner Jim Jones. And it so happened to be that French Montana also had his fair shares of problems with Jim Jones, due to him interviewing his rivals on his DVD. It was an enemy of my enemy is a friend of mine situation. French linked with Max in hopes of him being on his DVD and collaborate and recorded Jim Jones' diss record. Sidebar: you could say this was the beginning of French collaborating being a success. The diss song was a hit in the streets. maxb really took a liking to French Montana and thought they had good chemistry. maxb, who was struggling with having his business side of music in order, also liked how French Montana was able to hustle in the music game. maxb and French would start collaborating frequently. maxb was a very creative songwriter and had his own unique style that often involved harmonies and emphasis on a good chorus. French, on the other hand, was just another stereotypical New York street rapper who really didn't have anything to set himself apart. Under the guidance of maxb, French learned how to set himself apart with a more soulful style and not being scared to be different on a hip-hop track. It should be noted that French was able to adapt the maxb style with a natural ability, which led to the maxb cult of die-hard fans accepting French Montana. The cokewave era was born. French has now successfully attached himself to the hottest rapper in New York City. French and Max will go on to release close to 100 tracks together and release their infamous Cokewave CD DVD. For the next year, French and Max were continuing to grow, but there was a huge problem. With French attaching himself to Max, he has now put himself into that glass ceiling situation maxb was in. They were being blackballed and were not allowed to get radio play or any type of commercial business, due to maxb's problems and beef with label owner Jim Jones. And to make matters worse, it was highly likely that the man leading him to the promised land, maxb, will go to prison for a lengthy period of time in a few months. French will have to start fending for himself. And when those few months later came, the worst situation possible happened. maxb was sentenced to 75 years in prison for a crime he allegedly committed 3 years prior. With his partner in crime now in prison, it was up to French to rise up in the game on his own. Many thought that this would be the end of French Montana, but fortunately for him, maxb left him with a huge following of die-hard fans that were ready to stick by his side and wanted to see him continue to rise. They were hoping he would keep the wave alive and take it further, but what most people underestimated about French was his resilience, intelligent business acumen, but most importantly, you guessed it, his ability to network. French remained around maxb's circle and continued to do his soulful, wavy New York sound that he and maxb were known for a short time after, but he was aware of what was happening in the hip-hop game. While he and maxb were the hottest rappers in New York, they were honestly the last and only rappers in New York with a current buzz. The South and the ATL was starting to emerge, with Gucci Mane leading the way. With Max gone, Gucci Mane became the hottest rapper in New York and East Coast, even though he was from Atlanta. By the end of 2009, beginning of 2010, New York rap was an afterthought in New York, with Brick Squad being the go-to music in the East Coast. Instead of French trying to fight this, French instead started to adapt a more southern style to his music. French even went down to ATL to collaborate with Gucci Mane and was looking to attach himself to Gucci Mane, but Gucci Mane for some reason was not feeling French Montana and basically curved him. But fortunately for French, the trip didn't go in vain, because even though he wasn't able to connect with Gucci the way he planned to, he was able to connect with Gucci Mane's protege, Waka Flocka. Waka Flocka was the hottest new artist in the streets with his new song, Oh Let's Do It. French even signed a management deal with Waka Flocka's mother and was able to expose himself to a southern fan base. The southern fan base did not completely embrace French Montana like one of their own, but it was enough to get his foot in the door. Another factor was that his core fan base that he built with Max weren't also really feeling the southern style as much as the sound he was known for. This would lead to be the beginning of the love-hate relationship his core fan base with French Montana's choice of music to create. French would then go back and forth to his New York roots and focus on growing his own label, Coke Boys, with talented New York rapper Chinx Drugz and frequent collaborations with producer Harry Fraud. In the end of 2010, French dropped the song Choppa Choppa Down with Waka Flocka on his Coke Boys mixtape. It was French Montana's first step into the mainstream world of hip-hop. French Montana buzz was still steadily climbing and his fans were happy with the music he was putting out. A short time after that, French Montana and Harry Fraud put out Shot Caller, which will also get nationwide recognition, and proved he can make hits on a consistent basis. It should be noted that Shot Caller didn't have no big name features. But French knew he could only go so far with that New York lane he was in. This is when he would start to collaborate with Maybach Music Group, which consisted of Rick Ross, Meek Mill, and Wale, who were the new hottest group in the nation. It was easy for French to make this connection because he was respected for having his own lane in New York. At the end of the day, New York is the Mecca. French also had developed a knack for creating good hooks from under the guidance of maxb, which was another reason he was in high demand by other rappers. French would start collaborating with MMG on the regular, at which one point he was even considered an honorary member of MMG. French Montana was only considered an honorary member because he never officially signed to MMG, but it was a good look to attach himself to the MMG banner. With his frequent collabs with MMG and Waka Flocka, he was still able to focus on his Coke Boys music group, and his core fan base were still happy. French's career was bubbling more than ever, with still having the New York support and now new fans all over the nation. This is when he got the attention of P. Diddy and was signed to Bad Boy Records as the hottest new artist of Bad Boy. With now having the co-sign and backing of one of hip-hop's biggest mogul and gatekeeper, it was time for French Montana to produce the juice and prove that he can be the star he was hoping to be. And that he did. In January 2012, Stay Schemin', which was a Rick Ross song featuring Drake with French Montana on the chorus, came out. The song was a big hit and adored by fans. The only thing was that it was a Rick Ross record and Drake's verse was probably what stole the show, even though French did a stellar job on the chorus. He still needed his own song to solidify himself in the music industry, and that song came a few months after with the record Pop That. This was the turning point in French's career, and this was the song to catapult him into the mainstream audience. With this song, he could officially say he made it. But there was a huge problem with this song, and that problem would put French into a box he could never escape from again. The song was littered with big name features on it. Once again, it had Drake and Ross on it, but this time it also included Lil Wayne on the track. French made his way up in his career with collaborations, and this song was no different. Pop That was the party song of the summer that year and introduced French to the suburban crowd he was looking to get. Unfortunately for his core fan base, this was also the song that would lead French to start abandoning his soulful wavy styles that the streets have grown to love him for. It was the beginning of French Montana, the club party rapper. With the taste of mainstream success, Montana did not look back. He knew the formula to bring in the money. He did every once in a while drop mixtapes and songs such as Mac and Cheese 3 and Sanctuary for his core fan base, but he knew that is not where the money lied. He began chasing party hits, with other successful artists taking much of the loads on the features. In 2013, French was scheduled to release his debut album and release his latest single, Ain't Worried About Nothing. Aware of the narrative that was being painted, I Ain't Worried About Nothing had no features on it and was a hit. With 2 singles under his belt, he was able to drop his debut album, Excuse My French. Excuse My French did well in terms of sales, but it was received poorly by the critics and audience. It was, as you guessed it, filled with big name features, but the songs didn't resonate with the audience. It was not the music his core fan base was into, and it wasn't filled with smash party hits to resonate with the suburban crowd, which was probably the lane he was hoping for. The debut album should have been enough to set French Montana's career back, but like I said before, French Montana resilience isn't something to be overlooked. With French's debut now behind him, he once again focused on his Coke Boys music group with Chinx, Drugz, and Heavy Fraud, who were as hot as ever due to them putting the work in the studio and developing their organic sound. But French also had his ears to the streets and was looking to attach himself to whoever he thought was the next big thing. This led to him forming a relationship with Future, who a year later would end up taking over the rap scene and be the hottest rapper. But the collaboration might have been a year too early. They collaborated on a few songs and French was hoping to make a joint project with Future, but nothing ever came from it. At the time, Chicago drill music was also taking over the hip-hop scene, and French Montana wanted in. He was able to sign rapper Lil Durk to the Coke Boys. In all honesty, the Lil Durk Coke Boy thing was a flop and did not pan out how they both planned it would. By the summer of 2014, French Montana has lost his buzz and was no longer an artist people were checking for. Fortunately for French, his artists, Chinx, Drugz, and Heavy Fraud, was something he could fall back on since they seemed to have perfected their craft. But French never shut the door on his mainstream audience as he wasn't willing to let the door shut. That summer of 2014, an unknown artist from Brooklyn by the name of Bobby Murda released a song called Hot Boy on the internet. The song started to go viral and was soon picked up on the radio. French saw the traction the song was getting and made his own remix to it. Bobby Murda embraced French for hopping on the track since French was an established artist by now and he was on his way up. The French Hot Boy remix was French Montana's latest song to get radio play after what seemed to be a cold year radio-wise. By the middle of 2014, with the buzz he received from the Hot Boy remix, French was scheduled to release his second studio album, Mac and Cheese 4. This came as a surprise to his fans, as Mac and Cheese was a mixtape series that was usually made for his core fan base and not his mainstream audience. But for some reason, it kept getting pushed back and was never released, but fortunately for his fans, and to the surprise of everyone, in the end of 2014, he released Mac and Cheese 4 The Appetizer, which was a 7-song mixtape EP. It had no features on it and every track was produced by Heavy Fraud. It was unfortunate that it didn't get much exposure because it was highly regarded by its listeners. Sidebar, I personally believe it was French Montana's best body of work, even though I thought he was past his prime. I recommend anyone who hasn't listened to it to give it a try. French fully committed to his core fan base for this project, as it was extremely soulful and was a reminder that French was that wavy man who was brought up under maxb. 2015 was a really quiet year for French mainstream-wise, and it seemed that his protege Chinx Drugz had finally surpassed him. French did drop a joint project with Fetty Wap, who was the newest, hottest artist at the time, but the project seemed as it was just something put out and lacked commitment. He also did keep his usual trend of trying to collaborate with artists, but nothing really stuck. The one thing he had going was that his artist, Chinx Drugz, was on fire and seemed to have surpassed Montana for the time being, which could have ended up being a good thing for Montana, but unfortunately, that would come to an abrupt end in that summer of 2015, as Chinx was tragically murdered while sitting in his car that summer. Chinx was on track to be the next hottest rapper out of New York and had released a few songs that were getting major play and start to pop nationwide. He was scheduled to release his debut album that year. With the death of Chinx, it was not looking too good for French, who seemed to have his mainstream career die out and now possibly his street audience also. From the summer of 2015 to the summer of 2016, Montana would try to remain relevant with attempts to collab, but none of the songs were his and just kinda became a thing where the audience just couldn't wait for his lackadaisical verses to be finished with on the popular track he was featured in. But by the end of that summer, one song will gather him some motion again. French Montana will release Lockjaw featuring Kodak Black. Lockjaw was a banger. It was a reminder that at any point, French had the ability to get the hottest rapper in the street and collab to make a hot song. Lockjaw was a hit in the streets and radio, but once again, in the eyes of the fans, French seemed like an add-on to the song and Kodak was the star of the song. Arguably, the song helped Kodak in popularity more than French, even though it was a French song. About 8 months after Lockjaw was released, Kodak seemed to be the most in-demand artist, and French was really not heard from since then. Did he finally drive off to the sunset? No. To the stubborn haters' surprise, and like the phoenix he is, he was able to pull out a white rap from his black hat. In late spring of 2017, French Montana will release Unforgettable featuring Swae. Unforgettable was a bombshell. Unforgettable will end up becoming the biggest song of the year and his biggest hit to date. With that, you would think this would be enough to solidify French as a respected, talented artist. I mean, over a dozen hit songs in a little over 5 years. But no. The song came with controversy and ended up adding even more fire to the fuel that French needed other artists to make hits. Even though the song was a French Montana record, once again, most people saw it as a Swae song featuring Montana. It also didn't help that Swae was claiming it was his song and Montana stole it and added his verse. It was said that the track was a throwaway song that was just laying around, but when Montana heard it, he saw the potential it had and invested his own money to blow it up. Another thing that French Montana doesn't get enough credit for is his ear for music. Unforgettable was able to bring Montana a lot of success and keep his name in the limelight for at least a whole long year. But the narrative of French needing other artists to have good songs was officially set in stone, and he would now forever be known for this. I'm pretty much gonna end the timeline right there, as French Montana's career continues to go and he's still somewhat relevant due to his infrequent collabs with Kodak, Drake, and whatever new artists he can get his hands on. But it seems as his days as a mainstream staple in hip-hop might have finally ended, but I wouldn't bet on it. French seems to have the funds of getting any artist or track he wants, and it's just a matter if the music will be hot enough to override people's personal opinion of him. It seems as French Montana might be aware of this also, as he has reverted to making music with Heavy Fraud and being low-key, but the mystique just isn't there anymore. His mentor maxb is scheduled to come out of prison in the next few years, and that might be able to give him a resurgence. In my opinion, he should use his networking, good ears for music, and connections to build a label and find the next popping artist. But best bet, Montana will milk the cow until there is nothing left. In conclusion, French really did start from the bottom and work his way to the top, with a little bit or a whole lot of networking. But all artists do this in order to make it to the top. He just did it more than any other rapper. You gotta realize, he was born in a third world country and migrated to the slums of New York and is now a multi-millionaire through his love of hip hop. It's obvious making the most money possible was his end goal no matter what. The family is set and he now parties with Diddy and snuggles with the Kardashians. Bravo. Unfortunately, the trade-off for him being a sellout is that he is now considered a corny rapper by the majority of hip hop fans, including his own fans. But who cares? Those parties with Diddy's gotta be wild. It's your boy Rudell, man, signing out. Please subscribe if you haven't. If you ain't subscribed, you ain't wavy, and if you ain't wavy, that's your fault. Love and peace, we out.
That it make notice that level love. My cougar chick, yeah, that's my level love. I ain't buy shit, I know they let me on the 44 gold. I keep it low like a leprechaun. Just to the break of dawn. Don't make me call the dawn. Rocks on my arm.